Morning, everyone. Welcome to our today's webinar, The Secrets of a Successful Quote. My name is Zane Agostini. I'm CEO of CID Insurance Programs, and I want to introduce Jacob Cole, our marketing specialist who does everything behind the scenes to make this all work for us. Say hi, Jacob.
Hello, everyone.
So let's talk about the logistics, which many of you have attended our webinars before, so you know this by heart. But anyone who's new, just know that unfortunately, because there's so many people on the webinar, your voices will be muted, but you'll be able to hear, but not speak. But your voice is very important to us, so please use your chat room over to the right side and type in any questions as we go along throughout the webinar. I will answer those in the moment. So, and again, your voice is important. So let's talk about what we're going to spend the next 30 minutes on, and what we want to achieve out of this time. Understanding the underwriting process. Understanding what your underwriter goes through becomes really important for you to be able to get what you need for your client, and that's a competitive quote with good coverage. And then we're going to talk about what you need to know about a risk in order to get a competitive quote with the right coverage. And I'm going to drop into some applications and supplementals where I'll show you a little bit of what we're looking for and the importance to them. And then consider the effective tools for gathering the information. So let's get started. Okay. So I'm going to pick out I picked out some products that are very common for everyone. I mean, there's lots of apartments, so that's a great place to market if you're not currently marketing. There's apartment associations that you can become a member of, and there's a lot of POS, or what I call management companies can be a POS, point of sale, where you can get to a lot of apartments, and or these networks can do it as well. So great way to drive your grow your commercial book of business, because it's high property values, which drives up that premium. So let's talk about apartments and the Accord applications and what we're really looking for. So when we're talking about property limits, you really need to be thinking, do I have one building or do I have multiple buildings that are part of this? Is it apartment complex or is it an apartment building? So I'm going to show you a statement of values as we go forward, because you need to be able to break out the buildings, and I'll go over that a little bit later. But establishing the property limit is important. The next thing that you need to be aware of is the tenant rent roll, and that's really what you need to be able to put on the property Accord. How much rents is being brought in annually. So that's the number you need to look for, is the annual rents. And even if it's actual loss sustained, on a BOP form, or whether it's a package and they're rating the business income separately, everyone is now asking for that annual rents amount. So make sure you're putting that on your application. And then it's important to know that any property components that are detached from the buildings themselves needs to be a separate line item if they are looking for property insurance. So if you have fencing, you have a separate garbage, container or a structure, anything like that where, a truck could run into it and damage it, you want to be looking to insure those. If it's attached to the building, then you're in good shape, because you just want to make sure the property limit that you establish for the building includes that attached, fencing or whatever it is. So that's a little bit on property limits. And then the condition of the building becomes important to consider. Age of the building, all of you that are writing apartment buildings know that that's an issue. Some carriers like it, some don't, like the older buildings. And so many of your standard markets are going to, they don't want anything, 20 to 25 years old. Beyond that, they're not even going to provide quotes on those, so they just don't qualify. But we've got lots of markets that like the older buildings, and I'm going to drop down. So the building upgrades becomes tied to that age of the building, making sure that the kinds of things that they're going to be asking for is the age of the roof, when the plumbing was last upgraded, when the electrical was last upgraded, and things like the HVAC as well. So important to be considered. Most will be only asking for the year that they were upgraded, and not having to provide a lot of detail or an inspection report or anything like that. So that makes it a little bit easier for you to gather that information. Number of stories becomes something that you need to consider. Number of stories is tied to sprinklered. So when most carriers, when they're over 3 stories and above, require the building to be sprinklered. So and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but sprinklered is not partially sprinklered. In order to get the credit that they offer, you need to have a 100% sprinklered building, and then it would qualify. But some carriers won't write over. Some carriers go up to 6 stories. Some carriers may go up to 3. Some go up much higher. So, but as you get into the higher buildings, your number of markets available does narrow down, because most carriers don't like to write the high-story buildings. So I'm going to do a quick. I'm going to take you to a quick. Show you the Accord apps that we're looking at here, and that will make it just a little bit easier for you. Here's your Accord. It's the insurance, commercial insurance application is always required, and we're looking for the loss history. If we can claim, we can quote, but you want to be asking that question because you don't want to get caught with, when you finally get the loss history, that you end up with claims that and the quote can't be honored. So know enough about the loss history. And then general liability. You're going to be looking, if you're doing an apartment, you're going to be classification is going to be an apartment building, and the premium basis right here is going to end up being your for liability. It's going to be the square footage, and that's going to be area. Yeah, and there's a little chart down here that tells you. So and that's how you would list that out, right? So for your liability portion, some of this is not applicable. For contractors, that's not going to be applicable. So you have to learn how, but general information is going to be applicable, and so your property section is where you would end up listing out the property limits that you need, and if you have multiple buildings, you use the statement of value, and then here you could just list the total, that like sort of the blanket amount, and so it would be a building, and then the amount would go right here. And then you're filling this out as you go along, and then your upgrades come into play a little bit further down here. So right down in this construction type, all of that's going to be important. Have to fill that out. If there's a mortgage, an additional interest, you want to make sure you list that on there as well, so that doesn't, in case there's a cost involved. Generally, there isn't, but you want to get that listed right away. Okay. All right. We're going to drop out of this one and go back and keep going. So another item that you're going to have is a supplemental app, and this is really where they get into the loss control factors. And by the way, on our website, if you go to our applications page and you go to apartments, this is all sort of bundled together in there. You know, you already have your quote left, so it will tell you which ones you need, and then it will give you the supplemental and make it really easy for you to know what to submit. So in this case, it's really important to know, because you're going to have, anytime you move to a new carrier, they're going to do an inspection. And that inspection is going to be what we call, it's going to come back with potentially loss control recommendations, right? We all know that. And it can be a real pain if we don't know what we have or what the property looks like. So your loss control will come back to the insured on uneven concrete walkways and parking lots and have them repair it. They're going to inspect the stairways and the railings, and they really are starting to push harder on that 4-inch, both vertical and horizontal. So it becomes really important to be aware of what is needed. It can be fixed inexpensively these days, but still, you don't want any surprises. Making sure the pool is fenced. And one we get all the time is the fire extinguishers that need to be attached to the buildings. So those are kinds of things when you inspect the property that you want to be looking at. How many vacancies are there? Do we have a problem? Do we really need a vacant building policy? And then ideally, professionally managed is probably going to be better than landlord managed, but there could be some exceptions to that. But you're looking for good maintenance of the building. You want it to be maintained and in good condition. You don't want someone who's not maintaining, and over time it becomes a really in a bad condition building. Okay. Oh, and I think I was going to do the supplemental, so let me do that real quickly. Show you that. So this is what the supplemental looks like, and it makes it really easy. You're going to see it asks a lot of questions. So this is something you may not have. You may not have these answers. So you're going to. But some of the things that they're really looking at is the building systems. This is going to really only come into play if you're looking at the older buildings, because the electrical systems, the fuse boxes, and all of that. The panels, those are there are some manufacturers that have been already designated as causing fires, and they've pinpointed all of this to major claims. And so they're asking information about that. They're also asking about aluminum wiring. So those are the kinds of things that really become a problem. They're not saying they're not going to write it with aluminum wiring, but they do have some questions that they want you to answer in order for it to be potentially possible to write. Got your fire protection, as we've talked about, life safety if there's a pool, and then you've got additional exposures. Now, these additional exposures may not be applicable because you could have a mixed use. We quote those all the time, where you have residential on top and you might have retail or some kind of commercial exposure below. So that's what that is for. Okay, and then it asks about the vacancy. So let's keep going. So also with apartments, we provide on our website a risk profile. And really, this is just a guide for you gathering information from the insured. It's hard to get all this information. You probably will need that supplemental as a guide too, because in order to get that as complete as possible as you can. But having a tool that you can email to the insured and have them complete, or go into their office or go see them and complete it over the phone or in person, that's a valuable tool. And then I'm also going to show you that statement of values that I talked about. Okay, so this is designed for you to use as a tool. This is not the application, so I want to be really clear. I've just shown you the things that we will need for an apartment submission. But this you can use with your insured to get general information on this. And then here's your statement of values. So if you have a complex of apartments, that you can list them out, and we're looking for the square footage to be broken down. You would also want to break down the garage and carport square footage, and then number of units per building, and then the building value per building. So this is a really great tool. You can always contact, this is Michelle Belden, and you can always contact Michelle to if you have any questions in this area. Okay, let's keep going. Now we're going to move on to contractors. And so what do you need for contractors? And by the way, I know that there's a lot of paper that involved in with apartments, and you're going to find with contractors there's a bit of paperwork. So what I've found over the years is that it's really important at you as insurance brokers that are running your businesses. There's the detail side of the business, and that's really, you have to be good at it, or you've got to hire someone who can assist you with that and be really good at it, because that's how you talk to an underwriter. I mean, you want to sell a risk to an underwriter, but your best sales is going to be in a complete submission that really makes it easy for them to get a competitive, fast quote out to you. So and one of the things like why I picked apartments drive a lot of premium. So you're going to make more money, selling apartments, but it requires a clean, detailed, taking the time to do a good submission. Same thing with contractors. We do really well with new ventures, and that's the economy has changed, and there's contractors just coming into the business, and they're requiring the insurance in order to get their jobs. So it's important to remember that this is a payroll driven policy. So your premium is really driving off the payroll of and that I'll talk a little bit more, but and there's also a charge for the owners as well. But the payroll is for the employees that are working for the contractor. And then it's really important to know the description of operations, because we know contractors, they're like jack of all trades, and you really want to know what they're doing, because that's really how you're going to end up classifying the payroll. What about property for contractors? You're looking at a business location. Do they have a business location? And are they keeping equipment there? I mean, is there permanent items that stay at the business location? You might have a full office of furniture, so that's where you would have your BPP, your business personal property. And then what moves, right? You may need it, and usually you do need that inland marine coverage, because they're, a cement mixer or whatever it is that they're hauling around to sites needs to be either scheduled, or you could have a lot of miscellaneous tools that are unscheduled that are going to the site on the job. So that inland marine coverage becomes important because it's highly likely that they're going to have a loss. I mean, I've seen everything happen. Cement mixers fall off the back of a truck. You name it. It can happen over the years that I've been in the business. So that's important to consider. So let's take a quick look at and I think what we're going to find here is that here's your six pages of accords, and that it's all the same. It's your property section and your GL and your commercial insurance application. Okay. Now, yes, there is a supplemental for contractors as well, and that's because there's just different types of contractors. You have to know the kind of work that they're doing. So let's talk about it. So your trade and artisan contractors, typically they are what we call a C license, right? And they can have more than one C license. They might be doing, I'm trying to think, maybe plumbing and HVAC. It could be a combination of two things, and they're called two different trades, and they're called artisan contractors. And you're going to find a lot more like competitive rates for those artisans because they're specializing. But we've got great markets for general contractors, and no problem. They can be a complete paper contractor, or they can be they can have their own, team and use subs as well. So we have markets for that. That works for us, no problem. But what are we looking at? It's gonna, the supplemental wants to know: are they doing residential and commercial? Or are they doing just residential? And then I'll show you the app, and it will take you down the road of needing to know that information. It's important to know that there's a charge per owner. So you need to know that information because, darn it, they're going to find out when. And by the way, contractors' policies are audited. So, and I think I'll cover that on the next page. But it's really important to get that part right. You want to be able to break that payroll down by whatever class of business that they're kind of business that they're doing, and make sure that you know how many owners there are, because you want your premium to be accurate, and you don't want it to get caught at the audit at the end of the policy when you've already renewed, and then they go, oh no, there's 3 owners, we're going to charge you back, and then we're going to change the policy going forward. So it really does not pay to fudge on these policies, because they're audited and you're going to get caught at the end. And so it's by far better to be accurate. You can get a lower premium, but it's going to blow up in your face. And the thing is you want to keep your business. When you write it, you want to keep it on the books. So you need to make sure that you have a late pay system. So, and that you have an audit. You're following up on your audits and making sure your insured knows what they have to do, so that everything gets rated properly, and then you can renew the policy year to year because it was set up right to begin with. You also, subcontractors is another area, especially when you're dealing with general contractors, but it could be on an artisan as well, where are they insured? Are they insured or are they uninsured? So insured, the auditor is going to be looking to see, like, you've got a certificate of insurance from the subcontractor, and that and that way they are cut loose from you because they're insured. But if they're uninsured, guess what? That contractor is going to end up paying the price for that, paying the premium for that subcontractor that did work for him, because it's as if they're their own employee. They become their employee because they can't show that they stand alone and have their own insurance. Does that make sense? So let me know if you've got questions. I want to answer them as we go. And then you want to know what kind of operations are they performing, and that type of work that falls into the category of type of work. But it entails more. So let's just take a quick look at the supplemental, and you're going to see that it asks a lot of questions about the operations. It's asking for the trade and the payroll, and what kind of work that they're doing. So you can see here, they're trying to get a feel for the type of work that they're doing. And carriers have learned that they've got to ask these questions, because you can't have the work that they're doing be a moving target. Oh, well, we really only do this, but and then they take a job that is is really not intended to be not intended to be the exposure that they rated for. Okay, there you go. All right, so let's keep going here. So that's it on that's all we need on contractors. and that's Teresa. So she'll take really good anyone who works with Teresa knows that she does a great job and will always take good care of you. So another, Dan handles all of our property managers, and I'm going to start with the E&O application because that's usually what drives, if you're going to develop a relationship with property managers, they're a great POS because you go in and you write the management company's insurance, and then you go in and say, hey, let me do a review of all the properties you manage, and there'll be apartments, might be condos, and then might be single-family homes that you could feed into your personal lines department. So new ventures are fine in this business as long as they have some experience, and you're going to be looking at management and leasing income that they're going to be looking for, because the premium rating base is the receipts. So it's the income that they're bringing in, and then the application I'll show to you will help break that down. If you've got a traditional property manager, tenant discrimination coverage, that's the allegation that you discriminated. That coverage is not. That's an optional coverage on this, the E&O, and I would strongly recommend it. Usually they just need to fill out that section and then they'll automatically quote. And we can look at claims activity or potential claims activity, but that's definitely something you want to know about, and the application does ask. So let's take a quick look at that. Okay, so you can see it's asking. You can see that for gross income, it breaks it down because there's a rating factor for all of those. We can add in some real estate sales income, so that can be covered on this particular policy form as well. Okay, and then you'll see that it goes into, I believe, did I miss that part section? Claims, current insurance. I think it's buried in here where it talks about the tenant discrimination. So, but that's all you need to do is just have them complete the application. And if you have any questions, Dan Mulligan handles all of our professional, and he does a great job with this. He can actually quote this without an app, with a small amount of information. So if you've got one, email or call Dan and have him tell you what, the pieces of information. I think it's just revenues, and I can't remember everything else, so he's the one who does it all the time. And I think also they're looking for, he can also quote the EPL for this as well. So let's keep going, and we're going to do a little bit more on property managers. So don't forget, so you drive off of the E&O, but they need and most of the time they need the off-premise general liability coverage, and it's a little, that can get more complicated with property managers, because remember, they always get pulled in with their client, whatever happens at the client's property. They get named in whatever lawsuits or bodily injuries, that kind of thing. So that GL becomes very important. You don't want just a premises only, which would be only their office. So because that exposure exists. And then looking at their property needs would be usually within their office. And then fidelity, because they're managing the funds, so that's going to be an important coverage. You must always, even if, for every client, you need to be looking at all the coverages that they need. So you've got your employment practices liability. Cyber is, you've got to be asking, because that, the ransomware, cyber extortion, that is rampant. And so you have to be careful that you have offered it. And those little add-ons are no longer enough. So I recommend standalone policies. Dan can help you get quotes for that. He can quote that over the phone for you with just a small amount of information. It's usually that drives off of revenues as well. And then directors and officers, that really depends on the client that you're dealing with. A bigger company where, that you have a bigger board where, there could be differences where, because you can have a vendor sue the board, you can have another director sue the board, and you just have to consider this coverage, and take, and look at the company, and the exposures that are there. Workers' comp is another one that we do really well. And you don't want to forget the comp, because if someone else has it, they're going to try and steal your business. And then obviously over that GL, you really want to look at an umbrella. Okay. So there you go. So now let's talk about workers' comp. And Cesar Serrano does a great job, and Lexi Goldspring, she handles the renewals and Cesar's new business. And so things that become really important on the application is the named insured is really important. It's named insured in general, and people make a lot of mistakes with named insureds. You have to get that named insured right. I have seen claims denied when the named insured is not. You've just quickly written down part of the name, or misspelled it, or left part of it out, or used a name that really isn't the accurate named insured. It's a DBA that isn't used or something, and technically the name should be this. I've seen one policy issued this way, and then and another policy issued differently because the apps came in that way. So it's really important. Be consistent with the named insured. And then with workers' comp, the description of operations is, again, important, because you're looking at the types of things that employees would be doing. And everyone knows that this is payroll, and you need it broken down by the classification codes that tie to that description of operations. And then target premium is pretty important here, because Cesar needs to know where to go to bat to get the pricing to where you need it. And then consider the modification factor. That's always a key. And in fact, I was just working with Lexi on a renewal for one of our brokers where, the mod factor. So it rolls, it measures a 4-year period of time, but it takes 4 years for it to hit the mod sheet. And so you can have a claim that happened, well, not technically, it runs through the cycle in 4 years, but you could have 2 years ago, you could have a series of claims, and your mod's really low, which is great, you're getting a credit, and then suddenly 2 years later, those claims hit, and your mod goes from 85% to 115%, and that will more than double your premium when that kind of thing happens, because obviously now you're getting debited, not credited. And it's being able to explain that to the insured becomes a really important part of your job, so that they don't go out and shop you and think that their premium went up because of something you did or the carrier did. And that's why it's good to know your loss history, to know what's going on. We can quote subject to loss history, but you need to know. You have an idea of what the loss history is. Owners to be included or excluded. This has been, every one of you that's writing work comp knows that this has become a nightmare in California. It's like, because they're going to charge you if you don't get it right. So, and they don't want to go. It takes an act of God to go back. To have anything, changed going back. You really need to be clear up front whether they, and if you don't know the rules, contact Lexi or Cesar and get that answer if you're questioning that. So let's just take a quick look at this. And here's your workers' comp application. It's the Accord. And this we can work with. Now, occasionally on our website under applications, we will tell you whether there's a supplemental. There are not that many supplementals, so I think we will send it to you if you don't know, and you submit just this. So, but that's important to know. Okay, so workers' comp, things you want to be looking at. We can take new ventures, but you want them to have experience with what the business they're going into. We can write lapse of coverage. That's become more common than I would like. I'm comfortable with, but everyone writes lapse of coverage now. And we can do multi-state exposures, and then similar entity ownership is no problem. It needs to be 50% exact, 50% ownership, at least 50% ownership the same. And then I just mentioned the supplemental application, so that makes that so easy. So so that wraps it up. I took 4 different types of quotes that you might come to us for, and hopefully I helped. I'm going to plan to put more into the works. So always want your feedback and appreciate it. We will submit. You will get a survey at the end, and we would really welcome any feedback, like it, other things you'd like to see. Applications, as I said, are on our website under applications, and then you can start submitting today. Submissions at CIDinsurance.com, and we really appreciate your business. For those of you that are doing business with us, and any of you that are new to us, we welcome you to try us out. We are fast and efficient with our quotes, our responses, and so because we answer our phones, we answer our emails. So we're here to serve you, and we look forward to doing business with you. Thank you all for joining us today. Have a great day.